and welcome to another session of broadcast with me on talking leadership. Today I'm going to be talking about converting failure to success. We all fail, whether we like it or not, whether we choose to fail or not, we all fail. And because we all fail, I think it's quite an important and necessary topic for us to take a look at, particularly because many a times when we fail, we tend to wallow in our failure. We tend to hold on to that aspect of failure and never make progress from where we have failed. Now, a number of people have failed in some aspects and have turned out to eventually become successful, even in the areas of their failure. John Maxwell will state that the difference between successful people and those who do not succeed is their perception of failure, is how they view failure. And I agree, basically because as humans, we all have one form of failure or the other. And unless we accept that one fact, and unless we accept the fact that failure is not final, it is not ultimate, then can we move from the point of failure to the point of success? So I would encourage you to stick with me this evening as I make an effort to help us see how to progress from failure into success, how to view failure and how to build upon our failures to go to the point of success. So let us note that and please hold on to this lesson. Now, Albert Einstein will always say this. He says, failure is really just success in progress. Albert Einstein, and again, we know Albert Einstein. He says failure is, so he defines failure, or at least he views failure as just success in progress. Now, that again is correct, because in every venture that you want to succeed in, you've got to be resilient, you've got to move from the point of failure to the point of success. And in everything that humans have ever attempted, it has begun from the perspective of failure, and then we grew to the point of success. When the Wright brothers were making an effort to fly an aeroplane, they didn't just succeed at the snap of their finger. They didn't just succeed by their first attempt. They failed several times. They failed several times, and at several failures, or after several failures, they one day succeeded in flying the airplane. Okay? So hardly do we have anybody who starts a project and succeeds from start to finish. No, you constantly have failures along the line. So when Albert Einstein says failure really is just success in progress, it is true and correct, because for every human endeavor, you most likely begin at the point of failure, and then if you are consistent and you are resilient over those failures, if you adapt methods and change strategies, you end up succeeding. You end up succeeding. Now, just as a personal story, before I got married to my wife, and I've been married for 14 years now, before I got married to my wife, I had 3 relationships. And the least of them lasted for 4 years. For 4 years. At every one of these relationships, I had expected I would succeed and get into marriage. I had expected that I'll move from just courtship to the point of marriage. But at every one of them, I failed. Well, of course, every one of them was ended by the ladies that I was relating with, but it was a sign of failure, because they had several reasons why they didn't want to go the full hog with me anymore. There were several reasons why they didn't want to go the full hog with me anymore. And I accepted my failures, and from then on, I made progress. Why? Because every time that you fail and sleep in your failure, you will end up losing out. Okay? You will end up losing out. So every time that you fail is an opportunity, or yes, an opportunity to start afresh, is an opportunity to grow, is an opportunity to learn something new and to move on to something better. Again, so, having failed in 3 relationships, met my wife, from all the failures of the other relationships, I learned certain things. I drew lessons from those failed relationships and built on those failures. And eventually, when I met my wife, I translated some of those lessons that I learned to the relationship that we have with her, or just have with her. And then we built from that point to the point of marriage. And today, we're 17 years plus in marriage, not because I have not had failures, but because in spite of my failures, I learned from them and made progress by these failures. So this is what we will be talking about today. And I encourage you out there, because every one of us, regardless of who you are, you have had one failure or the other. You have had one failure or the other. And like I stated earlier on, John Maxwell says the difference between successful people and those who do not succeed is how you view failure. So how you view failure will determine how you relate with failure. Let me share another process of failure that I had that was meant to be devastating. But again, it turned out to be about the best lesson I've learned about academics. At the age of 15, I had the privilege to write, well, I may call it graduate, to graduate from secondary school. And at that time, of course, like it is in West Africa, you needed to write the West African Examination Council exam. At 15 years, I had gone into that exam confident. I had written the exams, all 8 papers or thereabouts, or I think 9 papers I had written confidently. And every time I had an auntie who was a supervisor at my exam center, and every time she asked me how the exam was, I told her, well, it was fine. Why? Because I assumed I knew what I was writing. And by the way, I had gotten to the end of my secondary school without really knowing that I needed to read to pass an exam. Because every time I went to the class and things were taught, I copied down. As I was copying them down, I was basically reading them. And as I was reading them, I was assimilating them. So whatever I held on the day of teaching was what I went into my exam hall to write. And you know what? It helped me. It enabled me to pass from class to class from class to the next class. But WAEC was an entire different ball game. And so when I wrote WAEC, after I finished the WAEC and the results came out, it turned out that my result was a disgrace. It was terrible. In fact, I went with a friend to look at the result. When I saw my name on the board, I didn't believe that that was my result. And when my friend asked me whether I'd seen my result or not, I told him, well, I didn't see my name on the board because I was not sure what I was seeing on the board was my result. He came to the board, my friend, checked the board, saw my name, and said, here is your result. Then he realized that the result was so woeful and terrible that he also, at that point, pretended he didn't see it. That's how terrible my result was. But in fact, when I went back home and my dad asked for my result, I told him I didn't see my name on the board, that my result was withheld. It was the first time my dad was hearing that a result was withheld, a WAEC result was withheld. It was strange. It was strange for both of us, both my dad and I. And I held on to that for a long time until eventually one day my dad went, checked the result, and realized that I had failed and failed woefully. Out of 8 papers or 9 papers, I had only a single credit. The rest were F9s, failures. But my dad knew from that point that I wasn't a failure. I had just failed an exam, but I wasn't a failure. So what did he do? He enrolled me again, and this time enrolled me twice. Okay, for an external exam, for an internal exam. By the time I had written the external exam, because I had learned that for me to pass WAEC very well, I needed to read. And when I read and read very well, I had 6 distinctions and 2 credits at the next exam. Why? Because I had learned from my failure and had made progress at my next exam. And from that date till now, I've never failed an examination. Rarely have I confronted an examination that I wasn't first or second in the exam. Of course, apart from the university where I came amongst the top in the class, but again, I didn't excel beyond everybody. Okay, but mark it, I had failed an exam woefully, I had learned from the exam, and from that time, I have never failed an examination anymore. Why? I learned from my failure. Henry Ford has this to say, okay? Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently. That's Henry Ford. Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, but this time more intelligently. So if you fail an exam, if you fail in a relationship, if you fail in your business, if you fail in marketing, just know that you have gotten an opportunity to begin again. But this time, with the experience of the failure, this time with the knowledge from the failure, that is, if you've chosen to learn, you can do something much better. There are stories of so many people who have failed. And let me share a few of those stories of people who have failed before and eventually became great at what they did. J.K. Rowling, I know many of us, well, maybe a few of us know J.K. Rowling, a lady who, during her Harvard, during a Harvard commencement speech said this, that I had failed on an epic scale. An exceptionally short-lived marriage had imploded, and I was jobless, a lone parent, and as poor as it is possible to be in modern Britain without being homeless. The fears that my parents had for me and that I had for myself, okay, had both come to pass. And by every usual standard, I was the biggest failure I ever knew. That was J.K. Rowling. Who is J.K. Rowling? She is the woman who wrote the Harry Potter series. Now, she had failed at several things, including marriage. She had become jobless at one point. She was almost homeless. Her parents had feared that she would fail. She had feared that she would fail, and then she failed. But eventually, because she held her ground and stuck to the grounds at which, or the areas at which she had chosen to follow, she eventually succeeded. By just the Harry Potter series, this woman became a multi-millionaire. The books sold, films and movies were made out of that one area of success. Today, not many know that she failed. Not many know that she failed. Why? Because she pushed on in spite of her failure and she succeeded regardless of her failure. So today we can talk of her successes and never remember to talk about her failures. Steve Jobs is another man. A man who has set up a company with his friends. And at some point, there was a tussle in the company, and Steve Jobs, was fired as the CEO of the company. Of course, he left the company, went, set up Next, set up Pizza, and some other ventures. But eventually, because of his success at Nets and Pizza, all right, he was re-enrolled, or at least he was invited to take up the CEO position one more time at Apple. And this is what he said when that event happened. He said, I didn't see it then, but it turned out that getting fired from Apple was the best thing that could have ever happened to me. Why? His perspective about failure had changed. He had lost his job, and perhaps you've lost your job. He had lost his prestige. Perhaps you've lost your prestige. Let me tell you, there is always a second chance and another opportunity for you to come back. Steve Jobs was re-employed by Apple, a position he held as the CEO of Apple until the day he died. Why? Because he had reappraised himself, he had understood what failure was, he got back his job, and Apple exploded to the end of the earth. Till date, his legacy suggests that Apple is one of the companies that cannot be thrown away, that cannot be joked with. How about Bill Gates? Again, when I mention the name Bill Gates, a number of us will remember him for his success. But we will never have known, or we will never probably have taken time to check the history of Bill Gates. He co-owned a business called Trafo Data, which was a huge failure. However, you know what? He did not let that deter him. He pushed on, he pushed ahead. He forged on and eventually started the Microsoft company. He became the CEO, at some point relinquished that position, became and remained the chairman until sometime this year when he decided to step down from becoming the chairman of Microsoft so he would concentrate on his philanthropic job. But you know what? He had failed at several things, but held his ground and succeeded eventually. And he says this, it's fine to celebrate success, but it is more important to heed the lessons of failure. It is fine to celebrate success, but it is more important to heed the lessons of failure. This is Steve Jobs talking to us and teaching us about failure. Okay? We could talk about Albert Einstein, a man who didn't learn to speak until he was 9 years old. Of course, that was strange. A man who was considered a rebel and so was fired from school. A man who the Zurich Polytechnic School could not take him. And yet, because he held his ground and continued to invent, he eventually became about the greatest inventor of renown. Okay? Hardly do you know of any invention now that does not arise because of the theories that Albert Einstein had propagated in the 18th century or 19th century. Okay? And he had this to say, success is failure in progress. Success is failure in progress. Let me talk about one more person, okay, and read his data. Then we would understand what it means to fail and yet to grow from your failure to success. Michael Jordan. Michael Jordan said this, I've missed more than 9,000 shots in my career. I've lost almost 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game's winning shot and missed. 26 times. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. What a statement. He's viewed failure from a different or an entirely different perspective. An entirely different perspective. He had failed several times. He said he missed over 9,000 shots. Yet Michael Jordan is known for taking basketball shots at the strangest angles and yet succeeding in making baskets. Why? Because he didn't consider failure as final. He didn't hold on to failure and say, well, my life has ended because I've failed once or twice. No, he considered failure as a process of learning. There are certain principles about failure that I need to state from the onset so that we can be guided to know whether, when we fail, we have failed completely or that there is a second chance for us to rise up from our failure. The first that we must note is that failure is never final. When you fail at a relationship, when you fail in a school exam, when you fail in marketing, when you fail in your job, it is never final until you determine that it is final. In other words, one failure should not define your life. One failure should not determine the end of your life or the end of a pursuit in a particular area. Why? Because failure is never final. This we must take note of. There are so many people who have failed at certain things, and because they consider that failure as final, they never rose up from their failure, and again, they never succeeded in doing anything thereafter. So we must note that failure is never final, never at all. That's the first principle that I think we ought to hold on to dearly and know, or hold on dearly and build upon, which is that failure is never final. The second principle, and this I learned from John Maxwell, is that failure is a process. Failure is a process. In other words, if you fail today in an examination, it didn't happen on the day that you failed. It happened because over time, you neglected to study for the exam. Over time, you neglected to do the things that you were supposed to do in preparation for the exam. Therefore, failure is a process. For you to succeed, you've got to watch how you live on a daily basis. For you to succeed, you've got to watch the steps that you take on a daily basis. If you are in a relationship with your spouse, you are married and you are in a marriage relationship, you've got to watch how you treat your spouse on a daily basis. Otherwise, you will end up in a divorce. So failure is a process. Failure is a process. It is not a one-time event. It is something that happens over time and culminates in the end result, which is failure. So one, note that failure is never final. Two, note that failure is not a one-time event, it is a process. The third is to note that failure is an event, it is not a person. So let me distinguish this from the last point that I made. What I was stating in the last point is that it is a process. It does not happen the day that it happens. At this next point, I am saying it is an event. It is an event because I've heard people call other people failures. No human is a failure. You may have failed on what you are doing, but that does not make you a failure. I shared my story. I failed at an examination. It was an event. It was an event that started from a process and ended up with failure at the exam. But on a daily basis, that you are not a failure. On a daily basis. Now, if we take note of these principles, if we hold on to these principles, then we can note, okay? Then we can note that no human is a failure. No human is a failure. You may fail at certain things, but that does not make you a failure, and you must hold dearly to this principle. Okay? The next is that every failure is an opportunity for growth. Every failure is an opportunity for growth. What do I mean by that? Every time that you fail, an opportunity has been created for you to start afresh. There's hardly any product in the market at the moment that was invented without any form of failure. Most of the products that we see today in the market were tested, and the areas where they failed were taken back, redrafted, recalibrated, reorganized, and then the final product came out. Now, even the final product had certain mistakes, and the owners of the product build upon these mistakes. And because they build upon these mistakes, they have continued to progress from one level to the other. Okay? So when Samsung releases a phone, an S9 or thereabout, it is because of the observations of the failure of an S8 that Samsung does the S9 and S10 and thereabout. Okay? When iPhone 11 comes out, it is because they've made an observation of the failure of iPhone 10 that they have reorganized and come up with something better. So, failure is never final. No human is a failure. Every failure is an opportunity to grow. And take it or leave it, every one of us has failed at certain things. Every one of us. You have failed at relationship. You have failed at your fitness exercise goals. You have failed at your business. You have failed at an examination. You have failed at bringing up your children properly. You have failed in your marriage, or you, of course. So every one of us has failed in one way or the other. Therefore, we must learn to accept the fact that we have failed and build up from our failure. And build up from our failure. Now, having mentioned these principles about failure, what are the steps? What are the ways that we can hold on and succeed from our perspective of failure? What are the ways that we can hold on from our perspective of failure? Now, let me pause at this time to say, I know that a number of us are online with me, and I appreciate you for coming online with me. I would advise that you share this broadcast with your friends, that again, you set up a watch party so we can have more people learning and drawing lessons from this. And then, if you have questions or comments, you can just pass them through the comment section. Now, depending on whether you're watching on YouTube, on YouTube or on Facebook, because I'm doing a simultaneous broadcast. Okay, so you can watch on YouTube, you can watch on Facebook. Now, so you can pass in your comments. I will read the comments. If you have questions, pass them on through the comment sections. I will read them and then get them across or respond to the questions as may be. Now, so I see two people who have sent comments. My cousin, the one I call my bestest cousin, Dorothy Paul, thank you for your comment. I see my in-law, Mary Soniode, who has also sent a comment responding to something I've talked about, and she appreciates that comment. So thank you. Just keep the comments coming, keep your questions coming, keep your contributions coming, and I'll read them as, or I can even post them on for others to see so that they can understand what we're talking about. Now, the first step towards making progress when it comes to failure and mistakes is the first thing I want us to note. Number one, which is to do what? To accept your failure. Accept your mistakes, accept your failures, acknowledge the fact that you have failed. Now, I'm saying this because some people shy away from the fact that they have failed. Note that every human fails at one thing or another. So that you have failed at a particular thing does not mean that you as a person is a failure. You have probably failed at the process of doing what you were intending to do. You have probably failed at the process of the things that you were intending to do. When the light bulb was invented, the inventor had failed over 9,999 times trying the bulb. And in fact, when he was asked, he said no, he didn't fail 9,999 times. He simply learned over 9,000 ways not to make the electric bulb. That's all. He acknowledged the fact that he had made mistakes, but he acknowledged the fact that he learned how not to make electric bulbs from those failures. But the important thing is he acknowledged that he had failed. So you must learn first and foremost to accept the fact that you have made mistakes and that you have failed. Particularly parents. One thing that I do that is interesting for me, it excites me, is I tell my children the areas where I had failed in life. Because I had failed my WAEC woefully, I spread out the results before my children and I tell them, I've been a lawyer now for over 23 years, but I failed at one point. And until I took seriously my studies, I will never have become a lawyer. But again, this is 23 years plus that I've been called a lawyer. Okay? That failure did not deter me from becoming a lawyer. It simply opened my eyes to teach me how to study. But one thing is that I acknowledge that I had made a mistake. I accepted I had made a mistake and I tell my children about it. Parents must learn to teach or tell their children their areas of fault. Even in relationships where I had failed, I've let my children know the reason why the ladies called off the relationship, or the reason why I'd failed in my exam, the reason why one thing or the other had transpired. I've let my children know. So you must learn to accept the fact that you have made mistakes. Okay? Don't become obsessed at improving something that you've done wrong or is not working. No. If it's not working, acknowledge the fact that you've made a mistake and let it go. If you started a business, if you started a school, if you started a study and you couldn't go far with the study, acknowledge when you have failed. Don't drag on. Don't persist and think that you will succeed. And also, don't blame other people for your failures. One way of accepting your failure is to accept the fact that you were the one who failed. Don't give excuses. Don't give reasons. Don't rationalize your failure. Don't come up with reasons why you had to fail. No, because that is blame throwing and it won't go well for you. Again, don't let previous failures stop you from trying new things. Accept that you failed, but having failed, accept that you can make progress. That's the first step. Accept and acknowledge the fact that you have failed. That way, you can create room for more progress. The second step is to take a break, take a chill. If you are starting up a venture or you're entering a relationship and it collapsed, take a chill pill. Sit down for some time. and make an appraisal of why you failed. If you're an athlete and a club was supposed to take you and eventually they didn't take you, sit back. Don't be in a hurry to push and impose yourself. No, sit back and make an appraisal of the reason why you had just failed. Because if you do not take a break, you clutter your mind. You impose too many events upon your head, and then you will fail again and again and again. So you must always know that taking a break for some time is not quitting, okay? And that because you tried a particular business, it didn't work, does not mean you cannot go back to that same business. But if you take a break to reappraise that business, to find out your areas of shortcomings, you can see clearly and also reinvent yourself and launch an attack against those areas of failure, and you will succeed. So take a break. So while you acknowledge you have made a mistake, the second thing is to take a break and reappraise yourself. The third is to find out why things went wrong. Take a piece of paper and write out all the areas of shortcomings regarding the venture at which you have failed. Ask questions. People have observed you. Ask from them the reason why they think you have failed. Investigate it. Do a deep research. Do an internal and external check to find out the reason why you failed at what you were doing. Do not lament so much about failure that you fail to learn a lesson from the areas where you have failed. And you cannot learn a lesson from the areas you have failed unless you investigate the reasons why you failed. For you to succeed, you must find out every time that you fail the reason why you failed. Every time that you fail, you must find out the reason why you failed. Now, having found out the reason why you failed, the next thing is to learn from your mistakes. If I was climbing the tree by the left-hand side, when there was a branch on the right-hand side that should have helped me to climb the tree better, can I now learn to go back to the right side to commence climbing the tree? If I just failed an examination, and the reason was that I didn't study properly, or I didn't focus on the areas of concentration, can I now learn to go back to the areas that I think will give me success in the exam and concentrate on those areas? Or do I just go about reading everything in an examination? And by the way, let me share a trick with us concerning an examination. For every exam that you want to write, there are certain topics that will reoccur by way of examination questions. So one way is to go back to past examination questions and do a tabulation or an assessment of the particular area that had always come out in the examination. Then do a study on that part. Chances are that that part will come out again in the examination, but this time you are better prepared for it. The other secret is to study hard. If you've been taught 12 topics, say for example, you've been taught 12 topics in school and you are told to go and prepare for an examination with regards to those 12 topics, I can tell you that if you study 4 topics very, very well, 2 out of those 4 topics will come out. If you study 6 topics exceptionally well, because you do not need to study the 12 topics to prepare for the exam, you can actually study for 6 topics, and I can confidently tell you that 3 or 4 out of your 6 topics will come out of the exam. That's one way to prepare for examination. This is an aside. But what I'm saying is you must learn from your mistakes. When Ford had intended to do the V6 engine, he had come out with the idea. Well, he said he had it in a dream or something, had come out with the idea, gave his engineers the opportunity to go and invent the V6 engine. The engineers went into the workshop, came out after some time to say this was undoable. Ford took the thing they said was undoable, did a study of it, gave it back to the engineers and asked them to make amends in the areas, in certain areas. They went in, came back and told him they couldn't do it, and they said that several times to him. But every time that they were told or he was told they couldn't invent the engine, he simply studied their areas of mistakes and learned from their areas of mistakes and advised them from those areas that they had learned, and they went back to reinvent. And eventually, the engine he had proposed came out in the manner and the way that he thought that the engine should have come out. Learn from your mistakes. If we do not learn from our mistakes, the tendency is for us to continuously make the same mistakes over and over and over and over again. Now, if you learn from your mistakes, you must change your attitude regarding mistakes. So what attitude should you have? Having learned from your mistakes, what attitude should you have concerning mistakes, concerning failures? You must have a positive disposition towards failure. You must understand that failure is a part of the process of learning. That failure is a part of the process of learning towards your goal. The inventor of the electric bulb failed 9,999 times. He never gave up because he knew this was the process to discover the electric bulb. The moment that the electric bulb was discovered and invented, nobody took cognizance of the mistakes that he had made. Nobody. So you must view failure from the perspective of the process of learning towards your main goal. Failure does not have to be final. Your aim is to succeed, and failure is the process by which you succeed. Failure is the process by which you build up to succeed. For every step that you fail, you now know that you cannot rely on this step. You now need to reinvent yourself. There's a statistics that suggests that over 80% of successful companies or starters of successful companies had failed at least 6 times in doing business. That statistics suggests that for you to succeed in one business, you need to fail 6 times in trying to invent a business. So if you have failed once, my friend, that is the starting point. It is a process towards your main goal, which is to succeed. Today we use the Facebook, we use YouTube, we use other social media, but we never can tell how many times the inventors of this social media had failed, and they had failed again and again and again and again, but they never gave up at any point of failure until they gave birth to the invention that they had in mind. The original owners of WhatsApp sold WhatsApp to Mark Zuckerberg at over $1 billion US. Wouldn't you say that their failure was worth every penny in that $1 billion. They didn't consider failure as final. They only considered failure as the process towards the success that they were aiming to achieve. And because they didn't give up, they invented the WhatsApp. When it was time, they sold WhatsApp at $1 billion. Friends, $1 billion will change any situation that financial needs require to change. So most successful people have had numerous failures. They had moved from one point to the other. They had failed at one point or the other, but it's considered as process towards the successful goal to achieve. Now, having done that, you must see yourself not as a failure, but someone who likes taking risks. You must see yourself as someone who enjoys risks. If you see yourself as a failure, you will end up not trying anything new. And by the way, everything that we do involves some level of risk. A number of people have died taking their bath, slipping off their bathtub, and hit their head and had died. But that has not stopped you and I from taking our bath in bathtubs. No. A number of people have driven vehicles, have had accidents, and died by the driving of those vehicles. That has not stopped you and I from driving vehicles. A number of people had climbed up skyscrapers, fell off the skyscrapers, and died. That was risky, but that has not stopped you and I from taking the risks of climbing skyscrapers. Now, if that be the case, why then do you stop taking risks that should help you build your life to be a better person? If everything that we do consists of a risk or constitutes a risk, why do you stop yourself taking bold risks that should help in developing your life to the areas of progress and success? Ben Carson, before he succeeded in separating co-joined twins, had made several attempts and failed. But he didn't stop at that. He continued making an effort, he continued taking the risks until eventually he became an expert at neurosurgery, checking up the brains of people, removing certain parts of the brain and allowing the person go with one part of the brain and living a successful life. Why did he do that? Because he considered himself as someone who takes risks. His attitude towards failure was that this was a risk and that if he succeeded, eventually he would become very popular. And of course, Ben Carson became exceptionally very popular. Again, your attitude must be that you consider yourself not a failure, but that failure had happened in the event that you attempted to create or to do. When you experience a failure, do not sleep in that failure. Do not consider yourself a failure. That you failed an exam does not mean you should not go back to school. That you failed in a relationship, that you failed in bringing up children, does not mean that you should not take care of other children or you should not attempt at bringing birth or giving birth to other children. No. That you had a miscarriage because of how you handled a pregnancy shouldn't stop you from attempting to be pregnant anymore. Why? Because you are not a failure. I am not a failure. So you must consider yourself not a failure, but consider the fact that failure had happened at your attempt to get at something. Every time you experience failure, you must be willing to bounce back with courage. Identify the things that have made you fail. Find your way around them and know what to do. Again, your attitude must be that of celebrating your failure. I've shared here areas where I've failed. I've failed in my work and failed woefully. Now I carry my head high because many years after I've failed that exam, it didn't stop me from becoming a lawyer. Many years after I'd failed that exam, it didn't stop me from teaching leadership. Many years after I've failed that exam, it hasn't stopped me from having children and from training them even from the areas of my failures. I've had relationships, and many years after I failed in those relationships, it didn't stop me from attempting to take on other failures or other relationships, and it has not stopped me from marrying. You know why? I celebrated those failures. When I met my wife, I told her about the last 3 relationships that I had. When I train people in seminar, I tell them about the areas where I have failed. I celebrate those failures because via those failures, I have learned certain lessons and built my life from the lessons I've learned in those areas of failure. And the truth is that the more you experience failure, the more you become comfortable at taking more risks so you can succeed. More so when you know that the failure does not define your life. When you know that failing does not define your life, you are able to take more risks. Now, every time that you fail, like I've mentioned before, you must view it as an opportunity for a new beginning, for a new start. Every time that you fail, consider it an opportunity for a new start. And when you begin with excitement, knowing that your mistakes of yesterday cannot be repeated. That's the way to convert failure to success. Be open to other people's views and perspectives. Listen to feedback, get results, do research. Anytime you fail, go back to people and ask, why did I fail? And why do you think how do you think I can succeed? Learn from people who have experienced failure and have bounced back from failure and are doing great things from the perspective of their lessons of failure. Now, do not be so strong-hearted or stiff-necked, as is usually said, by thinking that, well, I want to succeed, and then I do not need other people's feedback, and I will succeed in the way that I think I need to succeed. If you do that, you'll always fail. The reason why God made people is so we can help each other grow. It's so we can give feedback one to another, and from our feedback, we can learn from each other's failures. We can learn lessons from the lessons that others have learned, and then we can grow from those perspectives. One other way to build up and to make good of your failures is when you have failed and you have taken a break to make an assessment as to the reasons why you have failed. You must look for alternatives to that area where you have failed. When COVID-19 kept us at home, many people were not used to the internet. or at least they were not used to virtual meetings. But you know what? A number of us had gone back, made an assessment, and looked for alternative means to continue to meet with our workers, to continue to relate with our church members, to continue to discuss issues with organizations. And one alternative was to use the internet to relate with people. So suddenly, Zoom has become a household name. Why? Because people found a solution using Zoom to hold meetings and to hold webinars. Every time that you fail and you make an assessment of the area where you have failed, go back and check for new solutions. Check for alternative solutions to the areas where you have failed. And when you check out these alternatives, ensure that you try new ideas, new concepts, new designs to go about the things that you want to do. Every time that the Wright brothers attempted to fly the airplane and it didn't work, they came back and started new ideas or infused new ideas, new concepts to the things that they had attempted and failed. And you know what? Eventually they flew. Even when their father did not believe that people could fly, the Wright brothers flew. Why? Because they sought alternative solutions. They brought in new ideas to their areas of failure. So I encourage you today, brothers and sisters, friends all across the globe, that when you fail, do not think that failure is final. Go back to learn from your failure. Never lose confidence. Be persistent and consistent on the idea that has come to you, and then search the areas where you have failed and find out how to go around those areas to succeed. Never give up. Never give up. I'll encourage you today, just like I've shared the story of Bill Gates, J.K. Rowling, Steve Jobs, Michael Jordan, and a whole lot of others who have failed. Ensure that you do not give up. Hold on tight to the areas of failures. No, not the failings itself, but hold on tight to the ideas and continue to build on the ideas. And that way, I'm sure you will make progress eventually. I will stop at this point by appreciating you all for coming online, and thank you, Dorcas, for your comments about some of the things I've made or some of the things I've said. Now, as I round up, you would see beneath on the banner, born to lead the organization to which I work, and a number of phone numbers that you can reach out to us, even the email address. Please feel free. If you have any idea that you want us to build upon, send a mail to us. We'll go through the mail and respond to you. If you want to set up a date where we can have seminars or even webinars, feel free to send out this request through the numbers or through the email address, and then we can relate with you. We also have an Instagram page. We also have a Facebook page. Sorry, the Facebook page is not here. It is Born to Lead. That's the Facebook page, Born to Lead. You can go on that page and type out your suggestions, type out your questions, and make suggestions as may be necessary. Again, phone calls, you can reach out to us. Thank you, Daniel Seidu, for coming online. Incidentally, we've come to the end of today's broadcast. And I'll ask you, if you missed out on the initial broadcast, go to my personal page, which is Shedrack Bako on Facebook. Click on, you will see this video, and then you can take time to listen to the things that I've said and other previous videos from which I had spoken or said certain things about. So Never give up trying, just like Daniel Seju has mentioned. And thank you for your time. And see you on Saturday at 12 noon, where I will be discussing another hot topic that will enlighten us. Take care and cheers. See you some other time. Bye bye.